Here's a little doodle that illustrates life's misalignments with a little chaos. To begin, I'm sketching lightly in pencil, making the center part, which is higher than the two sides, and we're going to make it a little bit asymmetrical, so I'm making the left side a little higher than the right. This is just to add a little bit of interest, very, very simply, and then to make sure I have room for the door and the train tracks, I'm just sketching in lightly. There's the entrance to the mine a little bit to the left with the board over the top, and then the sideboards holding it up, and then we're going to do the train tracks misaligned to the right. So the plan was to go into the mine, but there's going to be a crash if we follow on the path we're on. So I just lightly put that in pencil, and I would advise the same, but then we're just going to go right into a marker to keep it simple for our journal, and just putting some lumps and bumps for organic for the rocks, no particular way, just making sure it's not just simple, smooth, and you can make this as detailed or as simplistic as you want. And then these are jutting off to the sides and looking like it's a little bit behind this front piece, so it's up higher, a little bit farther back. And then the same thing on this piece that's jutting out to the left. It's going to end up a little bit higher than the main rock of the entrance. So it's going sort of behind. And then just to give it a little bit of texture, and depends if you're going to go in and add some color to it, you could do that too, but I'm just giving some jagged zigzags to show we have some texture of the rock formation that we're going into to go down into the mine. And now for our entrance, right? So I'm just making the rectangle. It's up a little bit higher than the boards and the mine are, right? That's where that dark portion is going to begin, a little higher. We have our side planks on it coming out a little lower, more like they're on the front of that rock. And then the board over the top, which I encourage you to title it as to everything you thought your life would be, what you were aiming for. Be creative on that, of where you thought your train was headed and is not, what you've missed the mark on. So I didn't put any writing in there so that you could customize it. And then here is the train going off to the right of where it was supposed to be going. So we're making our train tracks angling where they've just run right into it instead of going down into the mine. And then the planks, they're underneath those rails, so I'm trying to show like it's easiest to start them in the center, so that's the big part of the plank, and that's the depth of it going down. That's the big part of the plank, and depending how much room you have, you could have more, and they do stick out onto the ends, so I'm going to have that here where it's coming off to the sides of the rails, and you're going to follow alongside your rail, right, for that vanishing point to then come down. So it's parallel to your rail, and then that's the vertical. My railroad ties went out of the frame, but you can see from the other picture they're getting slightly larger as they're coming closer. A little simple optical illusion. And then we're going to finish the rock. I'm leaving a little space on the rock if you want to put a kaboom bubble showing impact. You can add as much detail as you like. I'm just showing some gentle waved swirl lines for wood texture on the side planks. A few little dots for interest before we fill in the opening to the mine in black. Now you can definitely leave this part off, but if you want to add some little blades of grass and some stippling and some rocks around the opening to the entrance, absolutely depends how much time you have in your doodle. And I love symbolic art, and that is showing that the train is not hitting the mark. But I wanted to add some hope at the end, because if you see that the train is not headed to where you want, you can always jump off the train. And so I've added some footprints heading down into the mine as though you have jumped off just in time. So they're staggered like a little curved line, and then the top part of the foot is bigger than the heel. So it's just like a little bit, almost like a oval with the heel cut off. And you can color it in solid, add texture, but we're adding some hope like you realized before the crash and you've jumped off to head down the mine on foot.